I'm Hi everybody. My name is Mike Messier. You're probably on the Mike Messier YouTube channel right now. I'm working with an actress named Katelin Stack. And Katelin, where in the world are you today?
I am about 60 miles northwest of Chicago. So basically, Chicago.
Which I think is a great point because for a lot of people who are in the acting world, they do kind of recognize themselves by the closest market that they're in. And you're, an hour's drive from the Chicago, which is really one of the top cities for a lot of things, comedy, improv, acting. And
Yeah.
so, how long have you been in Chicago, Caitlin?
All my life.
Nice. Well, for those that are watching now, Caitlin and I are starting, and this is really our first full episode. Caitlin's Monologues with Mike Messier is the name of the show, and basically, it's during this time that we're in 2020, which has been a crazy time. We're trying to keep furthering our path as artists. For myself, I've done acting coaching for years. Right before this 2020 happened, basically, I moved to a different state. So I really haven't established myself or really made ties with a whole lot of people yet, as far as my own abilities as an acting coach. Caitlin and I met through a mutual friend, Anastasia Edwards, in her Actors Biz Facebook group. Caitlin, have you ever met Anastasia in real life or just
No, I
online?
haven't. Not yet.
She seems like a real trooper, and she really Anastasia, to give her credit, put this. And I've been in a lot of groups like this. I've been in Hollywood East actors groups, and I've been in different online groups about acting. But Anastasia, to give her credit, has done a lot of things during this time with Skype interviews and Zoom interviews with acting coaches from her own life. And just kind of inspired by one of her threads in there, I put it out an open call for my kind of services as an acting coach. She responded. We had a little trial session, and I was really impressed by what you were doing. And I said, hey, let's turn this into our own little series and call it Caitlin's Monologues with Mike Messier. And so what we've been working on is a piece from a film that I wrote called Blood Sugar Sedace. The film has actually been done for a while. It's bloodsugarsedace.com. But I wanted to get your interpretation of one of the monologues from the piece. And actually, it was your choice, the way I
Yeah.
remember it now. Yeah, and because I gave you kind of a web page on mikemessier.com, which was a bunch of monologues I'd written, and you chose the sugar monologue. Now
Yeah.
that I think about it, so what about that monologue kind of struck you initially, if I could ask?
It's so I was raised Catholic, and about I'd say eighth or ninth grade, I really kind of started to distance myself from the religious aspect of it. And from then on, I kind of considered myself agnostic, more on the side of atheist, and then more recently I came back to agnosticism. And right now, with all the insanity that's been going on, um, I've been kind of, I guess, theoli- the theologizing, for lack of a better term,
Sure.
um, and wondering, what, if anything, is out there. And so, given my previous experiences having gone to parochial school for kindergarten through or seventh grade, and just the utter bullshit that I put up with while I was there, and the seemingly blatant hypocrisy that was being, I guess, taught on top of all of that. I've kind of always struggled with that. So this one kind of it spoke to me in a way that this would be a challenge for me, because I'm at a point now where I'm a little bit more spiritual than I was ever before in my life after leaving that school.
Right.
Um, but when I initially picked this monologue, it was like, I have to push myself to really believe that this is true.
Gotcha.
Specifically speaking, devil and God, it really jumps out to me as being like evangelical or Christian or Catholic. So I knew that I would have to dig a little deeper to really bring this character to life, to make myself believe what she believes.
I get it. So you have to. and this is a great point. You have to separate your own personal beliefs or questions from the character who's so devout and so kind of believing in what she's saying,
Hmm.
that as an actress or an actor, you have to sell yourself on it before you sell the audience.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think that's pretty fascinating because, a lot of times you kind of the stereotypical thing is like a Robert De Niro or an Al Pacino. People say, "Oh, those guys just play the same guy every time," which actually, if you take a look at the body of the work of both of those actors, not necessarily true. Although they've both done their share of gangster films and cop films, but both
Yeah.
actors, um, I can see the point though that both actors kind of fell into a malaise of doing similar roles time and time again, and kind of the audience at times likes the comfortable. They like seeing an Al Pacino yell "boo-ha" or De Niro, tilting his head. But at some point, when you're talking about the Meryl Streeps of the world, you're talking about actors who will just take on anything and make something great out of it. So I'm eager to see how you're doing with Sugar Monologue. And like I said, this is really about process, not performance so much. But of course, performance is part of that too. So it's fun, and it's fun for me because when we made this film, I was very happy with the actress that played Sugar, Stacey um, Forbes Iwaniki, great lady from Massachusetts. But it's always fun to hear different voices, so to speak. It's always
Yeah.
fun as a writer, and it's flattering, to be honest. As a writer, whenever you hear someone read your words or perform them, it's kind of a fun thing because that's why writers write.
Yeah.
You know, we the thing about writers is we have egos too. A lot of times, those egos are not necessarily fed by the merciless film industry. So when we do get to connect with actors talented such as yourself and see the performance, it makes the cycle gets a little bit more complete as a writer because you're like, okay, this is, and a lot of times the actor or actress brings something to the table that wasn't there when the piece
Yeah,
was
for
written,
sure.
you know.
A
So
whole new personality level that you didn't think existed for the character.
yeah, subtext and just the different inflections, if that's a word, what inflections of different words. So I will give the spot to you if you think you're ready. Is there anything you want to ask or comment on before the monologue before we give it a first read?
Yeah, I think so. So usually in my process, when I go through the memorization, I'll record the monologue and I'll listen to it over and over again, and that's how it starts to set into my brain. So I finally got to recording it and listening to it, and the way that, and this is a really big block for me as an actor, but the way that I heard it back seems like all the wrong choices.
Interesting.
I underlined the wrong words. I've put the emphasis on the wrong words. The energy needs to be up here where it's down, and then down here where it's up. And this is something that I struggle with continuously in my career is, did I make the right choices?
Ah,
And this is what I do every time I leave an audition, which I know I need to stop because
right.
it's a terrible habit. But I will go into the car, like, well, when we had in-person auditions anyway,
Sure.
um, go into the car, and I have a good hour and a half drive from Chicago, which I just sit and pick apart my audition and realize, oh no, I should have said this way, or I should have done this that way, and it's detrimental to my self confidence, to my performance. And I'm trying really hard to work on being solid in my choices and believing that my choices are right, because inevitably, unless I have written what I am performing, there is no wrong choice.
I'll jump in with a few thoughts. Um, I think the first thing that's going on is you're doing what a lot of actors and actresses do, which is you're beating yourself up for beating yourself up. So not only do you have the post audition drive home for an hour and a half, depending on traffic, and I can relate to this because when I was auditioning at Boston Casting in Boston, it was just about the same amount of time, an hour and a half, through the traffic. to get back to Rhode Island, and it was always that same type of car ride. So I get it. But here's the thing: if you know going in on some level that once you get out of there, you're going to have the self-analysis and the beating yourself up and kind of second guessing your choices that you made while in the audition, then you can almost, in a cryptic, macabre type of way, look forward to it. Like look forward to the self-analysis and the self-judgment in your car ride home, and not to say make a joke of it, but maybe one thing is to have an exterior voice. I don't know if you have any acting friends you can call on the phone. And like for me, my car has a Bluetooth through the speakers, so I can
Yeah.
drive hands-free. So maybe there's someone, an actor friend who you can kind of counsel with, who can kind of help you process. And rather than see it as a torturous thing, enjoy the ride, so to speak. Like if you know that you're going to be self-analytical and critical on the way home, see that as an opportunity for growth or for self-critique. Because I think that if I were to tell you, because I've heard great acting coaches, my own acting coaches say, well, you leave it at the door. And
Mhm.
that's usually what a casting director would say. You know, a casting director slash casting coach would say, go in, you do your best, and you leave it at the door, and you go out and you get your donut and your coffee, and you go on doing something else. But the problem with that is, for an actor who cares, who actually, like for the
You
actor
can't separate yourself from the character from the audition. It's near impossible because you form this attachment with them.
good point. And you kind of have to, I guess what I'm saying is don't discount or don't beat yourself up for beating yourself up. In other
Okay.
words, if you're going to beat yourself up anyway in the car ride home about the audition, then for me or for anyone to say, well, just don't do that. That's like saying don't breathe air in the morning, or you know what I mean? Don't
Yeah,
go out.
it's like telling a depressed person, just be happy.
Right. So correct. Yes. So don't beat yourself up for beating yourself up. So here's what I'm getting at. If what you were saying 5 or 6 minutes ago was I don't want to do that, I don't want to have that self-critique or that self-criticism, then what if we say, let's take away the step of beating yourself up for having the self-critique or self-criticism. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Uh, don't feel bad about feeling bad. If you're going to have those emotions or those second guessing moments anyway, don't feel the need to beat yourself up for going through that process. Just go through the process.
Hmm.
And at least we've taken away the second process of the beating yourself up about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's kind of like when people go through a bad relationship and then they analyze and over analyze the bad relationship, and then they'll analyze and over critique themselves for analyzing and critiquing the bad relationship. At least at some point you can just say, I'm a human being, I have emotions, and that's okay. We don't have to apologize for caring, because I think one thing about the acting world or the auditioning world specifically is we're supposed to care because you're supposed to go out and try to get the job. And well, why would you be driving an hour and a half to even audition to get the job? But we're supposed to care to that level, but then suddenly turn off our emotions and turn off our faucet, so to speak, once we're
Yeah.
out the door. It seems kind of cruel, and it's not realistic. So I try to be practical in things that are not practical. Acting, film, theater, it's not a practical business. If someone were to apply, if they were a lawyer or a doctor and apply the amount of time into what they're doing, they would have certificates, they would have degrees, they would have diplomas. With acting, it's not the same way. It's the
Yeah.
wild, wild west. So that's my thought for you: is don't beat yourself up for beating yourself up. When you get out of the car, maybe an external voice would help, someone you can call and have a conversation about it, and laugh about it or cry about it. But I guess I would say, just like I've been saying, don't beat yourself up for beating yourself up. Enjoy it, and maybe we can learn from it.
Yeah. It's a very different way to look at it, and it's definitely something that I had not considered before. Because there's another group, acting group specifically, that I'm a part of, and their concentration is, to essentially cut those emotions off as soon as you're out of the audition. And I don't think my brain knows how to function that way.
Here's the thing with me, Caitlin, and I don't know, I don't even know the group you're talking about, but off the top of my head, it reminds me of actors that were studying, I guess the method, Stanislavski, and hey, that's a master right there, and maybe the master, you know.
Yeah.
But I did find with a certain contingency of that study, with certain folks that I actually was friends with, good friends with, they wanted to break themselves down almost in a military-esque fashion, which is basically anything I've already learned about acting or any of my instincts are garbage. I have to deplete myself of that. I have to get to the bare bones of this Stanislavski method. And I have to subscribe to the way that he was doing things 150 years ago or whenever it was in Russia or wherever it was. And obviously, I'm not that educated on it, but I knew enough to realize for me that didn't work because what these actors were doing was they were stripping themselves of whatever they brought to the table in their own life experience, whatever acting techniques they might have picked up from anybody else, acting books or acting classes, or just being a fan of films. And they were trying to do things in a way, to me, that was very calculated, but stripping themselves of individuality and stripping
Mhm.
themselves of emotion and for them it might have worked, but for me, when I started seeing some of the performances from some of the people coming out of this discipline, they all started to sound very similar to each other. And I wouldn't go so far as to say that they were bad actors. They were good actors, but there was a certain God length to it, you know.
Mhm.
Maybe that's what they wanted, but for me, it was maybe honoring the script and honoring the process more than honoring their own process more than making things interesting for me as the watcher or the potential director for some of these folks.
Yeah.
And I think that's a danger that happens with a lot of acting schools, if I could be so bold, is that the teacher oftentimes is such an egomaniac and the students kind of buy into it in a cult-esque fashion that pretty soon the acting students all have a very, they put this acting coach on a pedestal. And
Yeah.
I remember having a conversation with one lady, and she said the name of her acting coach is God. She said he's God, he's God. I'm like, well, look, if this guy is letting you believe that, if first of all, she was not a spring chicken, she was probably a 60-year-old woman saying this. But if she's of the belief that her acting coach in Providence, Rhode Island, was God, I'm sorry, but why isn't he on national television? Why isn't all his students? There
Right.
was just what I was getting from that was he made her feel good to be in class, which
Yeah.
is fine. He gave her a sense of importance. He gave her a sense of accomplishment, which is great. But to kind of put someone on pedestal to that way, to that extent, to me, I think is detrimental to everybody. And the results weren't showing it from either
Yeah.
her end or anybody else in his classes. So that's my rant. Um,
That's interesting what this whole kind of topic has been about because I think I mentioned to you that I just started reading No Acting Please
yes.
by Eric Morris. And there's excerpts from one of his students, and I can't remember her name off the top of my head right now, unfortunately. But she's also credited as an author. But one of the exercises, it's like one of the first exercises that he talks about is you you check in with yourself essentially. How am I feeling right now? And you basically, without thinking, kind of just rattle off how you're feeling, and you go into this little semi-audible diatribe about how you're feeling, and you try to get to the root of why you're feeling the way you feel. And it's all about awareness of the self. So yeah, rather than cut off the emotion or beat myself up for beating myself up, I should be aware.
Yeah, be aware of it. And if you can, like I said, just if you're gonna have that hour and a half long drive home anyway, see if there's someone available to talk on the phone, um, someone that you can relate to about acting,
Yeah.
and allow it to be a part of the process and embrace it. And even, like I said, not to make a joke of it, but at least make an inside joke with yourself, like, oh boy, I'm gonna have a fun ride home today. And I don't think there's anything wrong with, like, look, if we put all the time that we watch YouTube videos, or we Twitter feed, or we do this or that, if you put an hour and a half of having a drive home where you're analyzing your own performance in audition, that's really not a lot of time. You know what I mean? Um,
Hmm.
so I think it's okay. Um, Anything else about the sugar monologue before we give it a shot?
I don't think so.
All right, cool. Well, I'll let you take it away. Anytime you're ready, we'll run through this, or you will, and I'll enjoy it.
Devil is in the instincts. Instincts. You follow them. You follow them. You think instincts are God's great urge, take you to the promised land? They'll never do you wrong. Follow your instincts, your gut reaction. I don't think so. That is the way of the fool. An instinct is the devil's work. The devil, not God, rules this land. His pain exists, your instincts for pain. The devil exists, and as created by God, God must exist. Now, try to look beyond this earth ruled by the devil and sense a heaven with God. I wear you out. I am the negative space that you seek to fill, but you can never fill me because I am pages and pages. I am a book never meant to be read. Yes, instincts. What about them? The devil rules them, and he tricks you into thinking they are God's will, but they are not. God's choices come only through prayer, and prayer takes time. Because the devil is an impatient beast. He will hold you for a long time. But if you are strong enough and you do not relent and keep praying, you will get through to God. Because he is there, waiting for you to wait for him. And waiting is what I am good at. And this is how I'll keep myself in you. You will feel me praying for you. Because I stay long and hard. Longer than the devil. And reach you. The way God will reach you. But only if you want him. Me. Too. See.
Very good. No, I dig it. And you really nailed the last line, which is the him, me, too, which is a line that actors have had trouble with that line, and you got it really nice. Which is that real pause, with which the implication for me is she's putting God on a very high level, and then at the very last moment, she kind of puts herself on that level,
Yeah.
because she says him, me too. So this whole time that she's kind of putting over God, she's really putting over herself, which,
Yeah. Well, when we first talked about this, you gave me the image that I was talking to a kid who had just stolen like some petty amount of stuff from like a gas station or a convenience store. And that this whole monologue was basically me seducing him to my cult.
yes,
And part of the epiphany that I had this past week was, while I was listening to what I'd recorded, was that basically that entire last bit, which I originally had as "I want you to follow me," which is still true. It's not so much a come with me thing as it is a why don't you come with me?
Right.
Kind of thing. And so it's not supposed to be like, let me take you in under my wing. It's let me seduce you.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that's great. And I think that a lot of these cults use sex or sexy women as a
Mhm.
bait for impressionable people. And it doesn't necessarily have to be with other men, but it could be that the women are used to make other women feel like, hey, you're not alone here. There's other young women here, and
Mhm.
it's a sisterhood. And I've been
Yeah.
watching some of these things about Jim Jones, David Koresh, and a lot of these cults had a real deviance when it came to the power structure between men and women. There was a whether it was Jim Jones or David Koresh or whoever, they all seemed to surround themselves with attractive women who they would often impregnate, and they would often have more than one wife. Or in Koresh's case, according to what we know, or what we think we know anyway, he was literally impregnating other men's wives in the cult,
Mhm.
and these other guys would sit there and allow him to do it, or whatever. And
Yeah, because they were under the idea that their wife would be carrying a child of God,
right,
essentially.
right, and they would be in the what was it, the Joseph role, I guess. But I
Mhm.
like the way you did the monologue. I think when I was watching your monologue, I was thinking, wouldn't it be great if we had another actor there with you? Because I think that's what would really bring it home. And I think that
Mhm.
I was kind of looking into your eyes, thinking I wasn't sure if you were just looking at the monitor or if you were looking at some notes or something. But I was thinking if you had an actor there, that wouldn't that be awesome? Because I could see you kind of visualizing an actor with you. That
An actor that had a bunch of notes written on his face. Yes.
Yeah. But I was just thinking this is the type of thing that if we had, and maybe this will come in the future, but if we had an actor there with you that you could kind of play off of, that's what would really bring this home. Because um, the tough thing about monologues, just as a general note, is that they are a tool used for auditions, but it's almost like a different skill set in a way than acting with another actor. You know what I mean? So the audition process is I can see the frustration of actors, even like myself, who've auditioned many times and not gotten as many roles as they want, because A, we don't really know what they're looking for. So we're always
Mhm.
trying to give them what they are looking for, but maybe they don't know what they're looking for, meaning the casting people. The other thing is the audition skills are somewhat different than skills you would use in a scene with somebody else. Um, and for me, when I used to teach group acting classes in Providence most of the time, it was the question that came up a lot is, are we acting for theater or for film?
Right.
People would ask me about my class, and I would say, hey, we're acting for this class, meaning that there's no cameras here. I'm not taping you guys. I'm not taping the class. We're also not in front of a paid audience.
Mhm.
So the structure or the environment that we're in, more so the environment, is you, me, and the 7 or 8 or 10 other classmates. Like you're acting for this room. You
Yeah.
see what I'm saying? So I think what people kind of get caught up in is they have these projected imaginations of, oh, if I was going to do this scene in front of a 400 seat theater, I would do it this way. Or probably more so to the point with this scenario, if I was in a feature film with Denzel Washington, Keanu Reeves, Winona Ryder, and Uma Thurman, I would do it this way. And my take on it was just do it the way that we would do it for 12 people in an acting class on a Wednesday night.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like actually start with the reality of the situation that you're in, and we'll take it from there. And but as an actor, it's hard sometimes to cut off your imagination because we're always thinking about the future and what will we do in the future in given circumstances. But I think you're doing great with this monologue. I think what I would suggest, how do you feel about how it came across today?
Um, I definitely think that it sounded better in my head than what the recording has been.
Okay.
I think just given the little switches that I've turned on and off in my own head, um, it's definitely progressed. I still think that I want to reprint the monologue and rewrite my notes, though, basically.
Okay. Well, here's the thing. And this was going back to the car conversation before. But what I will catch people up on is I have a 3-step process. The steps are relatively easy. The first one is just highlighting. And the highlighting is usually best if, and I'm literally talking about taking a highlighter and highlighting your script of whatever words you're saying. Now, with a monologue, that's not necessarily as important because it's not a back and forth. Yeah, right. So it's easier, but it's a simple step. The second step is I do the underline exercise where I ask the actor or the actress to underline the key words that they would feel would be underlined or italicized for importance, and that helps a lot. So what you're saying, Katelin, is that you're starting to second guess the choices that you made in the underline exercise.
Yeah. Part of it is some of the words that I've underlined. I feel like a few of them should not be underlined, and I feel like more of them that I didn't underline should be underlined. And then on top of that, go ahead and explain the third part of your process, and then I'll piggyback on that.
The third part is the To Get You To exercise, which I took directly from a book, Ivana Chubbuck's The Power of the Actor. So as an acting coach, I have 3 books that I push. That I didn't write any of them, folks. So I'm not I'm not getting commissions, but I pushed 3 other people's books, and Ivana Chubbuck I think is the third one, because I think hers in many ways, actually probably hers is the second that I push. Hers is the most practical because she gives a process, and her process is to get you to where she's looking for motivations, but she takes motivations to the next level. It's not all self-centered, as in I want oranges or I want you to join my cult. It's I want to get you to listen to me discuss my family. I want to get you to listen. I want to get you to obey. I want to get you to come with me. I want to get you to be intrigued by me. I want to get you to be seduced by me. And what you do with this To Get You To exercise is you can break down every line of dialogue and even the subtext, which really gets in depth on a piece of script, whether it's a monologue or a dialogue. So it's Ivana Chubbuck's The Power of the Actor. I think the word 12 is in there in the title of the book, the 12-step technique for better performance or something like that. But I think Ivana only has one book as far as I know. Go ahead.
Yeah. So in what I've originally written on my notes, in how I've broken them down, I think that part of me wants to go further and get to that subtext with what I've written, and then I kind of want to change exactly what I'm trying to get him to do.
Which I like a lot. And so what we've done with this is we've created this secondary character of the young juvenile, not to say delinquent, but the young juvenile who's stolen a Snickers bar or something from the convenience store. And I like that. I like that you have an arc for this scene. Even though it's a monologue, you've created an entire world of this thing with an arc of both your character and the other character, which is great. Um, I do will comment a little bit because I see a pattern with you, Katelin, which is a unique pattern. And maybe it's not good or bad. It's just the kind of the Monday morning quarterback. Are you familiar with that term?
No.
It's a sports term, and it comes from football. Most football games are played on a Sunday.
Yeah.
So the idea of Monday morning quarterback is that sports radio talk show hosts and sports talk show hosts on TV will be the Monday morning quarterback analyzing the choices the quarterback of the football game made on Sunday afternoon. So if the quarterback threw 3 interceptions and fumbled the ball twice, the Monday morning quarterbacks will come in full force, which is anyone from the radio sports host to the TV talk show host to the guy at the proverbial water cooler. We all as men know what we would have done had we been the quarterback, had we been
Right.
Tom Brady or Terry Bradshaw or Jim McMahon for the Chicagoland area fans. You know, we all know what we would have done better. And I see that you're kind of a Monday morning quarterback actress, like with both the ride home from the auditions and you're second guessing all your choices from the
Yeah.
monologue. So I'm kind of in of two minds right now, which is I don't want to discourage you from doing whatever you want. If you feel that you want to reprint the monologue and re-underline it, that's fine. It takes about 10 minutes, if that.
Yeah.
So that's not a bad thing to do. But I guess at some point I wonder, is that action part of a bigger situation with you and your acting, which is you're always kind of second guessing yourself. And I guess I don't want to encourage that mentality or behavior either, because if it's always a game of Katelin does something pretty damn cool, but then she beats herself up for it, we're not going to get very far as far as we could, as far as we'd like to, if there's always this kind of chorus of second guessing or chorus of self-inflicted wounds. I'm fearful that we shouldn't feed that monster if it is a monster. What do you think?
I definitely think that it is a monster because this is, and I don't know exactly when in my acting career it started. I guess I know I can tell you why it started because I've gone on really, really awesome auditions where I walked out of there and I would never beat myself up. I would leave the audition feeling great, thinking that was the absolute best that I could have given. And I feel very solid in my choices. And then you don't hear anything and you find out that they went with someone else. And I know that there are a myriad of reasons as to why I wouldn't have gotten the part. But it has made me, I guess, question, did I make the right choices? Could I have been stronger in my delivery? So I guess I've gotten into the habit of second guessing myself, like what did I do wrong, if I did anything wrong that made me not be chosen. So I
Yeah,
definitely think that it's a monster because, and like I said earlier, I know that this is probably something that's detrimental to my career because I do almost every time second guess the choices that I make when I'm in the process of breaking down a script.
yeah, and I think the monster is threatening your enjoyment of everything, first of all. And if it threatens your enjoyment, then it makes acting a chore or a responsibility more so than a joy or a pleasure. And uh, I'm not saying that hard work's definitely a part of it, and struggle is a part of it, and emotions are a part of it that are
Mhm.
not always pleasant. But if we're getting to the point where this monster of self-critique, self-criticism is becoming unbearable or threatens to be, then you got to fight that first, because I think it's going to be hard to get roles and enjoy the process if this monster of self-critique and criticism is always kind of beat you up.
Yeah.
And I just feel that something's going on here that we need to kind of hit this monster with a big cave Captain Caveman stick.
A
And
giant mallet, maybe like
yeah,
Thor's hammer. That would, I'd love Thor's hammer to come in and beat this thing up.
yeah, because I feel like here's here's the kicker. If you do get a great role, right? If you do get a
Mhm.
great role in a feature film or a TV series or something, the monster's not going to go away.
Yeah.
That's the sad thing. The monster's not going to be vanquished by success, right? The monster would get bigger with success because then the monster takes it to the next level. Oh,
Yeah.
you don't deserve this. You don't deserve to be successful. You don't deserve to have a film role, or you don't deserve to have a TV career. So the problem with these self-critique monsters is they don't go away based on accomplishment. They go
Right.
away based on fighting them at their core levels. And then you might be getting into a whole other level of psychology with yourself. You know, and it's okay to go there a little bit, but then you're getting into things like, hey, what was my childhood like? Were my parents overly critical? Were
Hmm.
they apathetic? Did I have siblings that I was competing with? Did I have friends that I was competing with? Uh, did I do in my childhood, my teens, my 20s, whatever, the things that I wanted to do without feeling that I was walking on broken glass the whole time? And I would suggest that a lot of people, the answer is probably no. They probably had a lot of those things that I just brought up that were restrictive, or they were, you know, detrimental to them. So then you go from the acting to suddenly you're in this whole other world of your life, you know,
Hmm.
and that can be big time stuff, which is okay to explore that too, but um, it does kind of represent that it could just not be the actor. It could be anybody, you know, a businessman or a businesswoman who never gets the promotion they deserve, but they're fearful of leaving the company and starting their own company or going to a different company. It could be applied to a lot of different types of folks beyond acting. But
Absolutely.
you know, what are your thoughts on this monster thing?
Um, Given what you've just said, I think that it could, I mean, the start of it could be um, back when I was attending parochial school. I was bullied mercilessly from first to seventh grade, which is why I only stayed through seventh grade. I went to a different school in eighth grade because it just got to the point where it was overwhelming because you have the same kids in every class, so you're growing up with them and it just doesn't change.
Mm,
And I think I got to the point where I would, even if I knew the right answer for something, I would second guess raising my hand in class because anything that came out of my mouth, any action that I would make in school would be fodder for them. Um,
yeah,
and then even in my professional life, not so much acting, but I've been in abusive professional relationships where you try your best, and given that I was for a very very long time the only female at this place of work, I had to bust my ass extra to prove myself in the industry. Again, not the acting industry.
I hear you.
uh, but you push and you push and you push and you push, and even still it got to, at first they were impressed with me and they were happy to have me on board, but then it just became a game of manipulation where if I even showed the slightest bit of weakness, they would jump all over it. And it, I'll leave it at that.
It sounds like your presence threatened the hierarchy and threatened them as men, and they were threatened. They were threatened by.
That could be the case. I
I'm not
don't
saying,
know.
I'm not defending them, by the way. I'm saying
No, no, I know,
they
I
were
know,
threatened
I know.
by. They were threatened, meaning that they were vulnerable in their own insecurities and their own, you know, lack of confidence in their own selves. So rather than take the opportunity to kind of improve themselves, they gave you a hard time, which probably manifested in a lot of unpleasant ways, I would guess.
Well, here we are talking about insecurities.
Well, it's tough, and I see the pattern with both the bullying from ages one, from grades 1 through 7, which is horrible, and having, like you said, dealing with the same kids year in and year out, um, to this business endeavor, career endeavor, and it's a pattern where I can see it's like you're always trying to prove yourself or try to fit in with these people, and the pattern is a tough one to experience. So I feel for you there. And then when you take it to acting in the film or theater world, and it's all about auditions, it's all about courting favor, it's all about, do they like me? You really, really like me. That these feelings that you've already been through, it's just magnified.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think for me, I think I'm constantly having to prove myself to myself rather than a casting director. or a theater director.
Which I think is tough. And like I said, when I first saw your acting reel, 2 weeks ago, I was very impressed with it. So for me, what was missing, if you remember, we kind of went through a process off camera where we looked at your acting reel, and I thought it was great, but the only thing I didn't like about it was the thumbnail.
Yeah, which has been rectified.
That's good, right? So now your thumbnail is a much more exciting character because it's from this kind of like bride in the middle of a chaotic wedding situation with like the lipstick is smeared and everything is green, and it's just a lot more
She's
fun.
just a crazy bride. There's no wedding.
Oh, okay, interesting. That would be a good sitcom. The marriageless bride was just
Always a bride, never a bridesmaid.
well, where do we want to go from here? Because I think we want to we have another possible episode today, but where can we go further with sugar? Sugar, what do you want to do with it?
Now I'm second guessing my second guessings.
Yeah.
Well, I guess this is where I'll look to you as the writer / director. And this is something that I ask a director when I'm on set. Are you happy with what we shot today?
I think we're getting further with it. I think what I would suggest, get this, if you want to do the reprinting of the text and the re-underline exercise, go ahead and do it this time. And I'll say why. Because it's a first time experience for you doing the underline exercise with that. So it's okay if you feel like, hey, maybe my first instincts, so to speak, were a little bit off, or maybe it's okay. So I don't want to squanch that. So I would say go ahead and do that if you want, and just keep working on the script. I think the monologue is a good monologue for you. I think what might be interesting next week is if it's possible to set up like a stool or a chair with some type of stuffed animal or a doll or something. No, I'm serious. Like just something that we can kind of use as a visual reference, maybe more so for my enjoyment and the audience than for you. But if you had like some type of doll or stuffed figure, or if there was a person that you would want to bring into the mix, a fellow actor or something like that, if you wanted to bring a human being in and have them listen to your monologue. I don't want to get into a whole other thing with another person, but I just want to have either the doll or the stuffed animal or something for you to play off of.
Some physical representation of another person.
Correct. Yep. Or even a framed photograph of somebody.
Sure.
But just something to give your eye lines that focus, and that would be, I think, helpful. And just keep working on the memorization of it. So let's leave it at that. And so once again, to wrap up this show, and I want to thank everybody who's kind of hung with us. This is a process, over performance right now. You know what I mean? We're not doing this for a specific thing other than to explore it. I am available for acting coaching for anyone that's interested. Katelin's an actress in the Chicagoland area. Here's a question that I've asked other folks, Katelin, but I always kind of like the answer to it.
Yeah.
Do you have a preference or a non-preference, actor or actress, as far as the terms?
I don't have a preference. In the, I mean, if you get to the root of the word, it's just actor. So I'm not particular.
That's good. I've had that conversation with women, and it's gone both ways.
Yeah.
Some do have a strong preference, and some don't. And I think it's interesting. I think it's an interesting conversation, which maybe it's more interesting for me than other people, but it did become a thing a couple of years ago where a lot of female actors wanted to be called actors and not actresses. And now there's been a movement, which I don't think I'm sold on, to be honest with you, but I'm listening to it, which is the taking away of gender identifications in the Oscars and other awards. That instead of having 5 best actress and 5 best actor, have 10 people nominated for best acting without gender specifications. I don't think I'm quite sold on it, but I am listening to the conversation. I don't have the decision to make the power anyway. You
Right.
know, or I don't have the power to make the decision or whatever. But I think it's a hell of an interesting conversation that's going around. So I'm aware of it. Well, we're gonna wrap this up, and Katelin, stand by. But I want to thank everybody. If they check out Mike Messier YouTube channel, we've got the Katelin's Monologues with Mike Messier on the playlist, or her own playlist. There's Messier Mantra. There's Messier Peace Theater. Recently finished episode 6, and Mike's original films. And Katelin, where can people find more about you?
I am on Instagram and Twitter at Katelin Stack. They can find me on Facebook, Actress Katelin Stack. And I think my YouTube channel is just Katelin Stack as well, but I don't actually know that.
Well, we'll put a link in the description. Awesome. Thank you very much, everybody. Mike Messier,
Thank
Doc.
you.
Thank you.